YouTube. Today on the Naughty Librarian, I am going over my end of April wrap-up. In the second half of April, I read an additional 5 books. I am pretty excited about it, and I would say 3 of these 5 books were really good. One was alright, and one was... it was. On that note, let's just get into all of the books I've read this second half of April. First category is historical romance, and I read 2 of them. I'm going to start this review off right with Falling for the Highlander by Lynsay Sands. This is a book I knew I was going to like. It's part of the Highland Bride series. It has, kilts, smut, a murder mystery, romance. It's got like everything I want. It's perfect kind of book candy. I knew this was going to be like a light and fun read, and it was. I had a good time with it. I think I gave it like 4.5 stars. I went up really high at the end there. I think it's like a little bit over 4, but not quite 5. Somewhere in that range is how many stars I gave it. This one we are following Maureen and Dougal, and Dougal is one of the Buchanan brothers. There's like 7 of them. There's gonna be a lot of Buchanan brothers books, and I'm into it. And this is Dougal in particular. We've been introduced to both of these characters in previous books. Maureen is a lady who I always thought she had narcolepsy because she's constantly fainting. And I'm like, maybe in this time period they didn't have the term narcolepsy, but it turns out no, she's just really unhealthy. Sorry, spoiler alert, she doesn't have narcolepsy. She just like doesn't eat properly and like would be sick and like tired all the time because she just doesn't eat enough. And then finally they're like, you need to eat food, and they keep making her eat, and all of a sudden she's like, wow, I have all this energy. It's like, who would have thought? Anyway, that's like an aside. Maureen and her brother is like, it's kind of a dick, and he's broke, and he's just like, I need a horse. Do you want to have like some fun with my sister? You could give me the horse? And Dougal's like, no, ew, and he leaves, and then he finds this lady riding a bull. I know, but she didn't have a horse, so she runs away from her brother because her brother's like unscrupulous, and he's just like, oh, I guess you're with us now. And then they're out on the road, and he's like, I'm gonna see you safely to my sister, and they'll look after you because your brother's a dick. And then along the way, they fall in love. And of course, there is a murder mystery plot they must uncover along the way. It's kind of the same setup and payoff of all of the books in this series, but it's book candy, and I like that kind of candy. So I had a good time with it. The smut was steamy. The relationships are always fun because I always kind of feel like the women and men seem to be on a somewhat equal footing. Mind you, this is like 1700 Scotland, so there is a definite difference in like the amount of power women have as opposed to men. However, the men in these books seem to be very evolved for the time period, so I genuinely enjoy it, and it was fun. Just a fun book with kilts and sex and murder mysteries. What else could you want? Like, it's perfect. It's got everything I want. I also read The Perfect Wife by Lynsay Sands. So 2 Lynsay Sands books. This one I would say is more medieval set because the romantic lead, Payan, he just got back from fighting in the Crusades, so it's an even older type of book, I think. I don't know when the Crusades ended. I'm realizing now that I'm speaking. But like I was saying, this has Payan. He's just come back from fighting the Crusades. He's like, oh, I guess it's time for me to get a wife. And he is already betrothed since childhood to this woman named Evelyn. And so he's like, all right, let's go get married. And they haven't even met. They don't meet until the wedding. And she's a bit soft. And I mean that in multiple ways. She's very soft-spoken and kind as a person, and she's also a bit, as the book calls her, pleasantly plump. She's a bit curvy, and people pick on her, calling her, mean names because of her curviness, so she doesn't have a lot of self-esteem. But the thing is, Payan is a huge dude. He's like a big strapping guy. He's just like, I like a sturdy lady. I'm gonna break a little one. So he's just like, yay! He's totally cool with it. He's like, yeah, you got amazing boobs. I'm gonna put my face on him, lady. Like, he's happy. So it's just like, and again, I feel like this is kind of a prototype of all of the books of her historical romances, because this has nothing to do with Highland Brides at all, and yet it kind of follows the same tropes. It is, you know, there's a murder mystery in this as well. Someone's trying to kill her. Uh-oh, gotta figure out who that is because you don't want Evelyn to get killed. So again, another murder mystery going on here. And that's all fun. It's enjoyable, but this book is considerably older than a lot of the books in the Highland Bride series that I've really been enjoying, and this one came out in like 2005. And like, it feels like it came out in 2005. Honestly, in the end, I gave it like 2.75 stars. It's not very good. It's not. It's passable. Like, it's not terrible. Like, I read the whole thing and I didn't hate it. It's just, I can see how her writing has progressed in the last 15 years. Now it's much better. Payan isn't as evolved as the other men are in her books, so he's a bit high-handed with things. And I'm just like, And Evelyn is almost too much of a pushover at times that I felt there was something lacking here. I wasn't getting the sparks I wanted out of it. It was a lot of, I don't know, comedy of errors, I would say. If you like that kind of humor, you might enjoy this. But yeah, it's like 2.75 stars. It's not terrible. It has its moments, but like, it feels like it came out in 2005. Like, it's not great. I'll say that. So I read the whole thing. It was enjoyable, but like, I've seen her do better in other books, and I'll probably stick to those. Next category is Ginormous Fantasy, and I read 2 of those. I read Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, and this clocks in at a hearty 600 pages. It is a very long book. It is also the beginning of a new series. This is the last hour, so this is kind of Edwardian era, turn of the century, Gilded Age, 1904 era. So it is definitely taking place after the Victorian-inspired series. These are kind of the kids of all of the characters that we grew to love in Infernal Devices. This is the next generation. So it's turn of the century. It has a different feel, and I'm gonna talk about that first because all of the books in this universe all happen in the same universe. They're all Shadowhunter books. So they're all gonna have like a similar flair to them. But one thing I have noticed is that each and every series does have its own particular vibe, and it feels very centered in that time. It has its own particular flavor. And that's kind of a good thing because it's very easy to get all these different series muddled, but this one definitely feels like a new series. It has a different vibe to it. The characters feel different, if you get what I'm talking about. I'm not using very good adjectives, but I hope you're picking up on the vibe I'm putting out here. Like I was saying, we have a whole new crop of Shadowhunters going off on Shadowhunter adventures, and this is the Gilded Age, and I kind of like how she incorporated the Gilded Age into the setting as, you know, it's the Gilded Age, things were great and happy, and people were doing cool things, and it's kind of similar here, where they're like, hey, demon attacks aren't really happening that much, everyone's getting kind of lax. And then they find out, uh-oh, there's a lot of demons, things go wrong. I mean, you could say that about any of the series, really, but it felt very indicative of the time period that this is taking place in. So I felt like it gave it a very distinctive tone and feel from the other series. And that's kind of why I liked it as much as I did. Because for a lot of the book, it was hard to get into, I will say, because I wasn't like fully attached to these characters yet. Mind you, I had just met them, so I'm not like sucked into the story as much as I was in other series. It took me a while to warm up to them. They were just, I don't know, I just wasn't getting into the story, but part of the story is that like, hey, things are kind of boring around town. So things are boring for a fair amount of the book. There is like useless love triangles and all kinds of drama that I've come to know and love with this series. And I like it. You know what? I gave it like 4.5 stars. I genuinely enjoyed this by the end of the book. It had a lot of really, really cool stuff going on. So our new heroine extraordinaire is Cordelia Carstairs, which is, you know, a descendant of other Carstairs we will get into later in other series. And she is a badass lady. I kind of like, she's still growing, I think, as a human and a person, because I'm not sold on her yet. Like, I'm not her best friend yet, if that makes any sense. Like, I like her, but I don't love her yet. And I want to love her because there's a lot of vulnerability she shows throughout the book that really got me into her, but it took a while to get there. So I'll stick with that. That there are some things that are just obnoxious with the love triangle situations that don't need to be there. And that was like a hindrance for me. That I was just like, ugh, we're doing this shit again? Okay. There's demons, of course. We're going deeper into the demon world in this one and how it relates to certain shadow hunters and warlocks. And we're getting a deep dive a bit in this one. So it's definitely feels like the first book of a series as well, because it's a lot of info dropping and a lot of setup for the rest of the series, which is going to be coming out. So I think it's very strong and it's very distinct. It has its own flavor and feel from all of the other series in the Shadowhunters world. And I liked it. I thought it was pretty fun. I want to get to know these characters better because there's so many of them. Like, there's at least 8 staple characters in this, which is a lot of characters to keep track of, considering a lot of them are very similar, so I would forget who's who a lot of the time. There's too many characters and not enough time invested into each one of them to make them feel so distinct. So that was the part I was kind of struggling with, because there's too many characters to keep straight, essentially. I liked it, and I am very intrigued to see where this goes in the future. Like I'm not gonna read them. Hello, have you met me? Of course I'm gonna read them. I just think it has a lot of potential to do really, really cool things, and I don't think it's done enough cool stuff yet. Like, so far so good. It was a fun, enjoyable read. I had a great time with it, but I think it can do more, and I'm excited to see where this is gonna go, because it has loads of potential, much like the Gilded Age itself. So I'm into it. I'm in. I liked it a lot. I had a good time with it. I want to love these characters, not just like them. So that's where I am right now, but I think that's gonna come with time. We're gonna grow with these characters and build upon them and really get into them, because I haven't really talked about any of their development yet in this review, and I don't think I'm going to, because that's kind of the fun of reading it, is meeting the characters and seeing their development. So I liked it. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was a good book. I had a fun time with it. I also read House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, and this clocks in at 800 pages. It is a very, very hefty book. In the end, I did give this 4.5 stars. I actually really genuinely enjoyed it. It's definitely for Sarah J. Maas fans. I feel like if you've read her other 2 series and you liked both of them, you're gonna see a lot of the influence here. Like, there's definitely so much influence from ACOTAR in here. There's a lot of wingspans in this book, and there's also a lot of similar characters that you would see in Throne of Glass. And I think why I like this book in particular is that it felt much more Throne of Glass than it did ACOTAR. Like, it had like, I don't know, like the wingspan sexy vibe of ACOTAR, but like the cool drama, character development, bravery that I really, really loved in Throne of Glass. So that's why I think I liked it more, because it doesn't focus on all the stuff I didn't like at ACOTAR. I liked it. I gave it 4.5 stars. In the end, I thought it was very, very good. Is it perfect? No, it is not perfect. It has issues that, like, are just silly. Like, they're not any issues that are big enough to really hinder me liking the book. There are some character choices that I'm just like, Bryce, who's the main character in this, and like her decisions are kind of very chaotic. They're all over the place, but she's very much has like an Aelin vibe to her, which is why I like her. And she has like such growth and development throughout the story, and I do like her vulnerability and at the same time snarkiness, because that's like a well-rounded heroine to me. I really like that. I feel like vulnerability is a trait that's underutilized in heroines, so I really liked her for that aspect. Let's just talk a minute here about like pacing and story structure, because this is 800 pages. Does it need to be 800 pages? Absolutely not. It doesn't. I mean, you could have told this story in a much more condensed way. You could have knocked this out in 400 pages, I'd say. I've seen it done. I've read a lot of urban fantasy that give me all the feels this did in a much more condensed format. So it could have been done. However, that's just not the way Sarah J. Maas writes, I'm starting to realize, because all of her books are between 500 and 800, 900, 1,000 pages. All of her books are enormous. She just writes a lot. That's just her writing style. So if you want brevity and getting to the point quickly, you're not necessarily gonna find it here. It's a bit meandering. There's a lot of little details going along that are explored when really you could have cut off a lot of these details and kind of streamlined it and had it be tight and be just as good. You know, it's more about the journey than the destination, essentially, here. There's a lot of meandering, a lot of subplots, and yes, you could have cut them and made this a streamlined book, but would have made it a better book, and arguably, no. I think it would have been good both ways. So it's really gonna depend on the reader, I think. If you have the patience for 800 pages and you kind of like her writing style in general, you're gonna be fine with it. If you're like a speedy person, you want to get to the point, you might be frustrated. Like, if you're coming in here and you haven't read any Sarah J. Maas, you only read urban fantasy, you're gonna be very frustrated because it's taking forever to get going. However, I loved it intensely for a lot of the character purposes. The friendships in here are really deep. The big dramatic conclusion is so action-packed and awesome, although it doesn't necessarily make the most sense because all of a sudden this person knows how to wield a sword and you're like, when did they learn to use a sword? I don't understand. But anyway, that's another one of those tiny problems I was mentioning earlier that makes this not perfect but doesn't hinder my enjoyment of it. And honestly, I would say for barely the last 100 pages of this, it was just reader tears. Like, fine, I'll just mail you my reader tears in a jar, Sarah J. Maas. You obviously want them. It's rough. It's a rough ending. It is a hard, rough ending, and not in the fun way. Ooh, so many reader tears. It kind of wrecked me. And that's good. I want to be wrecked. It was the same thing with like a lot of the Throne of Glass books where I'm just like, here's my reader tears, like crying all the time. But it was really fun. Is it perfect? No. Is it a really fun read? Yes. I'm excited to see where this goes. And the other side of the coin here is that if she never wrote another book in this series, this still feels like a complete plot. You know what I mean? It kind of does feel like a standalone. Like, don't get me wrong, there are open threads here they could pull upon going forward, but they concluded the whole arc in this book. They didn't like leave off at a certain point where more stuff needs to get fixed. They fixed the shit they needed to fix. So it does feel like a full closed off book. I'm not gonna be like hating my life waiting for the next book to come out because I feel like it's complete. Like, I can wait. Which is a nice feeling. Thank you, Sarah J. Maas, for not like hurting my soul this time with those cliffhanger endings I'm used to. This one is just like, yeah, it's settled. And I like that so freaking much that it was settled. So yes, huzzah. Last category is hard pass. And I read one book that I had to hard pass on. I don't fucking get it. So I read Docile by K.M. Sarza, and I literally don't get it. And before I do this review, I do want to acknowledge the fact that art is subjective and it's not my place to judge art. However, in the case of this book, I don't understand or see the artistic merit of it. I'm really baffled by it, frankly. I don't get it. So, basic idea behind this story is that in, I'm assuming near future, unchecked capitalism gone awry, and basically debt is a serious problem, and one way you can get rid of your debt is to sell yourself as a docile, essentially a slave, and people can buy you, and then like if you owe $1 million, you have to serve X amount of years as their docile, and then your debt is recovered. I mean, it's got the makings of a dystopian. Immediately, it became vastly apparent that this is slave fic. I feel like the term slave fic should be sufficiently self-explanatory, but for those not of the romance community, slave fic is a book that features a romance between a master and slave, which is problematic for all of the obvious reasons. I don't enjoy slave fic. I don't like it. I think it's very problematic. I realize there is a market for it. I am not the market for it. So immediately I was like, oh. I had a soul deep cringe to start the book, and but I kept reading, and I'm like, well, maybe it's gonna make a point about something. And I read a great deal of this book. I read like 60% of it, and I was honestly so soul deep cringing and hating the book that I started skimming. I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna skim a bit, see where this is going. If I feel like it's gonna turn around somehow, like I'm still not gonna like this book, but I'll at least finish it. So I skim read the last 40%, and hot damn was I disgusted. Legitimate disgust. When I got to the end of this book, I literally threw it away and said, ew. And I'm not even being facetious, the book literally was thrown by my hands. Like, I needed it physically away from me because I was grossed out. Back to what I was saying about artistic merit. This is a male I don't want to use the term romance because it doesn't really apply, but it's two men, and it's Elisha and Alex, and Elisha is selling himself as a Docile to pay for his family's debt. So he ends up being bought for a life contract. So he's the Docile for life now, and Alex buys him. And, their relationship, there's so many problems, I don't have enough words to describe it. The most basic terms is slave fic, as I mentioned, but let's dive into that a little bit more. Essentially, all of the sex in this book are rapes. All of them. All of it. And I don't see what the artistic merit was for it. The first sexual encounter in here, there was a moment of Elisha acknowledging the fact that it was rape and then being very conflicted about it because he enjoyed the experience, because Alex did make it enjoyable for him. He was a generous lover, so to speak. So he physiologically enjoyed the experience. It didn't hurt him. However, Alex would not have stopped if Elisha didn't enjoy the experience and did get hurt. He wouldn't have stopped. So no, it's not consent. It is very much a rape. There was no thought in Alex's mind at any point, hey, I should ask permission to do this. He's like, no, this is my property and I'll fuck it if I want. And it's very fucking problematic. And the thing is, like, am I supposed to be learning something here? Am I supposed to be learning somehow that unchecked capitalism and slavery and rape are bad? Because fucking duh. Like, who doesn't know that? And the people who don't know that, sure as shit, they are not the target audience for this book. I am very confused. You're just preaching to the choir here. Like, am I supposed to challenge my concept of what consent is? Because no, I shouldn't be doing that. Yes means yes and no means no. If someone has no ability to say no, then it's not yes. It could still be a no. That's the problem here. And I can keep going in more and more into the ideas behind consent here and how it's not showing anything useful. I think it's very damaging because we're supposed to be thinking about these situations and how is it really kind of consent, because Elisha does enjoy the experience and falls in love with Alex, but no, we're not supposed to challenge our concepts of consent, because if you read Alex's perspective, and it's fucking rape. I don't understand. I really don't. I'm trying. I don't understand at all. I don't get it. I'm grossed out. And let me just tell you, sorry, spoiler alert, I'm gonna talk about the ending for a hot second, because when I read this ending, I literally threw the book away from me because I was so disgusted. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this book. Whatever. Basically, Elisha falls in love with Alex, and Alex realizes he's in love with Elisha, but he realizes what he's been doing to Elisha is wrong! Because fucking duh! And they have this big breakup, and there's a lot of other drama that happens, blah 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 blah, whatever. In the end of the book, the big ending, the big, like, moment where, you know, the moral to the story here is that Elisha and Alex have decided they're gonna try again and be together, but it's gonna be different this time because now there's consent. Like, it hurts my soul. Like, my soul hurts a lot knowing that's the ending, because the ending of this book says, hey, it's okay to fall in love with your rapist as long as they stop raping you. What in the actual fuck? Sorry, I had to throw it again. I don't get it. I am bothered a lot by this book. I have seen glowing reviews of it, and I don't know what they're seeing that I'm not seeing, because I am thoroughly grossed out. Which puts me in a weird position because art is subjective. Yes, I acknowledge that. If I don't see art in this, someone may. However, you know what's not subjective? consent. It's not subjective. It's a very black and white area. And this is trying to make it into a gray zone, and I don't appreciate it. So, I guess, let me know in the comments if you get it, because I don't. I really don't. I'm trying, and I don't get it. I'm grossed out. Whew. Alright, so those are the 5 books I read this last half of April. There have been some ups and downs. Overall, I read a lot of fun ones, and I had a lot of fun reading them. Mainly because the 2 fun ones I read were enormous, so they took up a lot of time. Let me know in the comments down below, have you read any of these books? And if so, did you love them? Did you hate them? I don't know, just talk to me. Tell me stuff. What are you reading right now? Whatever you want, comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. And if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye.